So I think we have all the board members. Jen, will you give me a sign that it's okay to start when it is? Yes. We'll get started. All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the West Hartford Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting for Tuesday, December 1st. We are back in virtual format, and this is to promote accessibility. We had received some comments from members of the public that they had difficulty understanding us with our masks on when we were meeting in town hall. And so, unfortunately, we can't meet without our masks on in person. And so we've moved back to the virtual setting for now, and still hopeful that we'll be able to meet in a regular way in person sometime later on this school year. So to go ahead and get started, Cammie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Aronson?
Present.
Dr. Chang?
Present.
Ms. Polun?
Here.
Dr. Steinberg?
Here.
Dr. Thomas-Farquharson?
Here.
Ms. Wilcox?
Here.
Mr. Zdanowitz?
Here.
Student Representative Lillian Sweeney?
Here.
And Rochelle Yarabelli?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Rochelle, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this evening?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have a revision to the agenda order this evening. And so far, we don't have any members of the public who have signed up to speak. Is there anyone who has called in who would like to address the Board of Education this evening? If so, just give us a holler. Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. We don't have any unfinished business. Moving to new business. New business item A is a motion to accept and approve the West Hartford Public Schools Equity and Anti-Racism Vision Statement, with a recommendation that the Board of Education accept and approve the West Hartford Public Schools Equity and Anti-Racism Vision Statement. I will move this, ask for a second, and then we can discuss. I think Amanda has seconded it. Thank you. And so just as an explanation of this, we have received a few presentations by Dr. Haskins and Dr. Ratchford regarding our work around anti-racism and equity, including educating our staff, educating students and families, working towards a more diverse professional staff for our district, making a more welcoming environment, and more. And we have a lot more work to do on this. But one of the ways that the board wanted to endorse this work was to formally accept and adopt and approve this, the vision statement. So that is the motion before us. Are there any comments on this from other members of the board? If so, you can put your question in the chat box and I will call on you in the order in which I see the question marks. If there are any questions or comments. Lorna.
Yes, thank you. I think
this is something that certainly reflects what we support collectively as a board. I think this is another example of where there are some decisions that are made that just reflect human nature and what's in the best interest of just humans in general. But I also think it's important to acknowledge this is not just something that is to be put in writing, but it's something to hold a charge to all of us to be accountable, to model what the mission statement is saying, and that this is something that's not time limited. It's something that is indefinite. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but just wanted to say this is the beginning of many steps to come of reflecting how we support this vision, not just through our words, but through our actions.
Thank you. Any others? If not, we can proceed to the vote, and I will try your minds. All those in favor of adopting, accepting and approving the vision statement, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Abstentions? And the ayes have it unanimously. Thank you, everybody. We will move on to staff communications and reports and start off with the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Deb. As is the case, typically we'll be, I want to give an update. Right now, we continue to operate hybrid at the secondary schools and in person at elementary. We've actually seen a decrease in cases from a high of 2 weeks ago. Last week was actually slowed down a little bit. We went from 123 cases 2 weeks ago to 96 cases last week, which kept us from going over that 25% threshold, which is, even that threshold's an arbitrary number kind of decided during the summer. But hopefully that flattening continues, and good news for us overall. I do want to say, we're kind of looking at chunks in that, we got to Thanksgiving, which we had talked about in early October, and now we're looking at that December break. And the chunks are kind of each getting to a little more light at the end of the tunnel. And news with vaccines continues to be good. And hopefully, teachers and people in the buildings will be in the very early waves of people that get vaccines. So we know that they're kept safe, and that we can move forward with a little more openness in our schools as we go into 2021. I don't want to let Thanksgiving go by without giving thanks, though, to the people that have worked so hard to keep our schools open. I can say let's keep schools open, and we can I can make that decision. But if people don't come in every day, if people don't continue to work every day, if teachers aren't there, if TAs, if paraprofessionals, if our office staff, if our bus drivers, if our cafeteria workers, if our nurses, if our custodial staff, if they're not in on any given day, it puts all of our plans to rest. And their commitment to the essential work of educating our children is so inspiring. And I'm just deeply thankful to be a colleague to all of them. And I want to put out my thanks to everybody in the West Hartford Public Schools, because we do have a lot to be proud of. And one of the things that's really good, when you look at our dashboard, and again, from the beginning, we've publicized everything in our dashboard, there can be things that lead to questions like when you see all of a sudden, okay, a school had 3 cases or 5 cases and this many classes go into quarantine, and we can't give as much information as we might like to give because we want to respect privacy that goes along with contact tracing. And one of the reasons we've been able to do what we've been able to do in staying open is that people have responded so well to contact tracing. Because I've heard a lot of stories from places where people aren't answering the phone or people aren't giving information, and that's the danger. You don't want to be shaming people for getting ill, because this is just the environment that we're in. One of the typical things that happens that I think we can't say, but you get a family with 4 children. that are in our schools, and let's say it's split amongst two schools, two in the elementary, two in middle school, and all of a sudden that elementary, now you've got two classrooms going into quarantine, you've got higher numbers at that middle school, and that's really what we've seen. We still don't see that spread within the schools, and we know it because we can track all of these students who are in quarantine. We have a spreadsheet with everybody in the district, students and staff, that is currently in quarantine. And our nursing staff, not only do we trace, okay, these people were close contacts, then we trace all of those people for the entirety of their quarantine to see if they get the illness after that period that they were put in quarantine. And, there's cases where certainly if their exposure was to a member of their family, where certainly we've seen positives where we've expected positives. But those that have been exposed in school, I mean, we just haven't seen it. I'm not saying it's not impossible. And somebody said to me at one point, are you saying it's impossible to get in school? Absolutely not. I'm saying that our mitigation strategies have worked very well, which is, again, another thing to be thankful for to our staff members, our parents, and our students who have taken this so seriously that we don't see that in school and that we don't see those kind of free-for-all situations, which does mean we've given things up. Somebody from out of state sent a picture of a classroom celebrating Thanksgiving, and I was like, oh, that wouldn't happen here. That's, those kind of things we've moved away from right now. And I look forward to them returning at some point in the future. But right now, we really don't expect to close. I've said it repeatedly since October going into the Thanksgiving break, and now with 3 weeks until the December break, I would expect that, as Dr. Fauci said again on Sunday, keeping schools open is our priority. And I think we've done it in a smart way. I think the mitigation strategies are working. I think hybrid at the secondary levels is important. I think hybrid and shifting our schedule for lunches is important. Now we're at the point where we have to begin planning for next year. And there are certain things that I've said all along where we've talked about, because kids will be planning, high school students will be planning their schedules for next year soon. And that's the kind of thing where, we expect to be back to normal for next year. And that's one of the great pieces of news from the vaccination news. Because, there was a time earlier this fall where we were looking at, okay, well, what's opening going to look like and how are we going to transition next year? I expect next year to be a more traditional school year. And with that is likely we'll go back to our old schedule. And I've had some people say, well, what about block schedules? And I said from the start, this is not a way to get to block scheduling. If people want to talk about that in the future, that's the process that the board would have, that I would have, that we would study and look at it, but this wasn't a way to get block scheduling into our secondary schools, because there's always people that are fans of it, people that are opposed to it, but that would be something we'd study and look at the results from this year. So with that, that's where we are. I'll be honest, people heeded the warnings as far as travel with our staff. Rick spoke to so many staff members, and our absence rates and numbers going into quarantine this week were not unusual coming off any weekend. And I'm deeply thankful to all the sacrifices that so many have made to keep our schools in session and to keep that opportunity for our remote learning experience, which we're going to talk about tonight, to be there for those families and for those staff members that, for a wide variety of reasons, have felt the need to make that choice this year, most commonly for health reasons. And it's something we're really proud of to be able to offer that, but we'll save that for that discussion. But questions?
Looks like there aren't any.
Perfect.
Is that possible?
We've said it all.
It's just such a normal school year. What could we possibly have to ask? All right, well, let's move ahead then to the staff reports and board discussions. And item 1 is the remote learning experience school programs. And I know we're all looking forward to this presentation this evening.
Sure. And, I began introducing, and I'll let Paul do a more full introduction, but when you see the team of people that are here, Michelle Gravlin, Susie Sinatra, Carrie Jones, Tim Kessler, Paul Vacinis, who have taken this undone experience, thing that we've never thought of doing, never had to do, and knowing that we're doing it for a year. That's the thing, is that knowing that there is an end date of this, as opposed to, okay, we're building something, investing going forward. No, we had to go all in and get this going from the start, and seeing where we are now. It's one of the things I think at the end of this we're going to be most proud of, is how West Hartford Public Schools responded really to those with unique needs and offered a different opportunity, but kept education at the forefront for these kids and families that for one reason or another couldn't access our in-person school. So, Mr. Vacinis.
Thank you, Tom, and good evening, everyone. I'll be very brief so I can turn this over to our presenters, but I wanted to take the opportunity to definitely thank and acknowledge certainly Carrie Jones and certainly Tim Kessler, who kind of began this journey right from the onset, certainly not knowing what they were getting into. Very quickly, we brought in Dr. Michelle Graveline to be an assistant principal at the secondary school, and Ann McKernan, who has just given invaluable support throughout the entire process in the background. Likewise, Mary Listini and Ashley Callan, who are just unsung heroes of the elementary, and with a huge welcome and great thanks to Susie Sinatra, who we've just recently brought in to be our more full-time kind of wear one hat principal of the remote elementary, so that Carrie and Ann can continue to work at the district level and continue to support, at least from an arm's length. So without further ado, I certainly want to thank them, and I certainly want to thank all the teachers that are involved. This is a huge lift and a huge, there's a lot of shared staff, a lot of people doing things that are different. But I'm excited to introduce Susie and Tim, who will lead us through the presentation.
Good evening. Give me 1 second to get the presentation up. All right, so good evening. My name is Tim Kessler. I'm the principal for the remote middle school and high school. And tonight, Susie Sinatra, who is the principal for the remote elementary school, is going to be joining me for the presentation. We're very excited to be here tonight to share with you these programs and highlight some of the amazing opportunities that are afforded our students at both the elementary, middle school, and high school. Tonight's presentation is going to begin with a brief overview of kind of the daily programming of what happens at each one of these levels. Next, we're going to share how the RLE engages students and families in the remote setting. And then we're going to end our portion of the presentation by reviewing how the RLE provides academic, social, emotional supports for our learners. Hold on, is my presentation up?
No, it's not.
Oh, I apologize. There, is that the presentation? Figures.
Oh,
There we go.
okay. There
All
it
right.
comes. All right, excellent.
I apologize for that.
All right.
So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Susie Sinatra to review the elementary program.
All right, thanks, Tim. And good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for this opportunity to share the wonderful teaching and learning that has taken place in the RLE. I'm very excited to join this tremendous team. And first, I'll start you off with our youngest learners, and they are pre-K to 2. They are using the iPad and the Seesaw platform for their asynchronous learning and their meets. And the students, teachers are able to post asynchronous assignments on here, give students individual feedback, and the students are able to submit their work in various forms. We have digital, there's an example on the bottom corner of a digital submission by a student, and they can either take a picture of their paper and pencil work or add videos. And one thing that I was really impressed with that I wanted to share with you is this quick little snippet of an audio from a first grade student and her math thinking.
2 plus 10 equals 12. I know that because I use my counting off strategy. And I said, I know that's 10 because we've been talking about our fancy 10. And if we add 2 more, it's got to be 12.
So I wanted to share that short little 20-second snippet, but it gave valuable insight for teachers on what the students are thinking when they're explaining their thinking during the asynchronous learning. So teachers don't actually have to be there to hear their students, which I think this is great for them. And also, as we move along to our older learners, the grades 3 to 5, they're using Chromebooks and the Google Classroom platform, which is a little bit different than Seesaw, but teachers are still able to. Deb, did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. The teachers are still able to post assignments. They can grade student submissions. They can return it. They can give individual feedback. And again, they have their meetings through Google Classroom as well, and students can post their work. Here's a picture of a poster a student made, and they just took a picture of it and posted it. And on the next slide, you'll see an example of a computer-generated math assignment, and then this is what the student will see for teacher comments. And of course, the comments are private, so that's very good for the students. And on the next slide, this is a I would share this slide because it's what a small group synchronous learning situation looks like. The small groups are usually 6 to 10 students, and here we have 8 students, and it is allows for a more focused instruction and more pointed feedback for the small group and the students. The small group also provides a more intimate setting where the students can feel safe and interact with each other and build relationships with students from other buildings, which is a important part of their social emotional growth. And on the next slide, we see a picture of a digital classroom. These are Bitmoji classrooms. They're all the rage lately. And so teachers have these posted on their Seesaw or their Google Classroom. And this is more of a one-stop shopping experience for students and families. So on this, every picture you see, it links to a website, or it could be games or books. You see the books on the left side. There's games in the bottoms, and in the upper right over the teacher, you see those are links to all the more frequently used platforms that the students are used to using. So they can go to this one page and hit up everything they could ever need. And there's also passwords in there for them, and links to schedules for specials as well. And so I think this is a great little treasure trove for students and their families. So they don't have to keep looking around for different things that they need. And so that concludes the elementary portion of the programming. And now we'll move on to Tim and the secondary program.
Great. Thank you very much, Susie. To review the program at the secondary level, I'm excited to allow 2 of our RLE students to share their thoughts and experiences.
Hi there, my name is Tarina Ranch and I'm an 8th grade RLE student. My home school is Subject Middle School, West Hartford, Connecticut. Hi, my name is Alessandra and I'm a freshman at Conard High School. I have been a remote learner since the start of school in September. My remote day depends on the letter day, but for the most part is very similar to what a hybrid high schooler does. School starts at 7:30 a.m. and goes through to 1 p.m. with 5-minute breaks in between classes. Our classes are very interactive, and we do activities and assignments in class just as we would in person. After the 4 blocks, we have a lunch break, which is about 30 minutes long, and then we have afternoon sessions available if needed. What I really like about remote learning is that it brings students together because we are all learning to overcome similar challenges at home. Despite being physically separated, the remote learning environment provides us with a strong sense of community and respect for each other, which makes the remote classroom environment more welcoming and rewarding for us. Our teachers share their screens as they deliver their lessons, and they also use different platforms such as Nearpod and Expand to serve our familiar standards. Learning from home also provided me with the opportunity to improve my time management skills. But this has been a great experience. A few things that I highly appreciate is how West Hartford Public Schools had it all organized starting from day one. The teachers in the first couple of days explained us clearly how our schedules would work and how the RLE system works. They always make sure to answer questions in class, and for any questions outside of class, we are always told to email them. Our responses come back very quickly. Without their dedication, we would not be able to learn at home today as we are. I definitely miss the in-person social interaction with teachers, classmates, and friends. But at the same time, remote learning also decreases the distractions of a typical school environment. While the pandemic continues to create a challenging environment for our entire nation, I am not only feeling very comfortable with the learning resources and education infrastructure that is provided to us students, but I'm also very grateful for the significant effort invested by decision makers and teachers to enable students to a continued successful academic path. Thank you very much and stay safe.
All right, I don't think I could have said it any better. I think those are two great examples of kind of what's happening at the RLE in terms of the secondary level. Next, we'd like to take a moment and focus on a little bit of the ways we're engaging students and families. First, at all three levels, we are having principal coffees with both morning and evening sessions as a means to engage as many of the community members as possible. Next, we provide regular family newsletters to ensure that families are informed and kind of up to date about what's happening in the RLE and what opportunities there are for them to engage in. Next, in terms of student announcements, at the elementary level, they do a morning announcement, and students can participate in that by volunteering to say the pledge, having a morning greeting, or even tell a joke. At the middle school level, we have a dedicated small group of students who are working to create a weekly news program to share out with students. So far, we've had one news update, and we're looking forward to other updates. And those are being shared out during our advisory periods at the middle school level. In terms of after-school opportunities, at the middle school and high school, students can participate in any of the virtual clubs and activities that are offered at their home schools. So again, those are being really pushed out through the home schools, and our students are engaging through those opportunities in Google Meets. And then finally, we're always looking for opportunities for ways to engage students and families outside of the regular school hours. A few weeks back, we had over 180 families participate at the elementary level in a dance party that was hosted by a New York City DJ. And at the secondary level, I'm very excited to announce that next Friday, we're going to be hosting our first of 3 family paint nights that's being sponsored through a grant that is a collaboration between the Foundation of West Hartford and the Office of Equity Advancement in West Hartford. Again, the hope is that we're going to be able to engage 25 families during each one of these opportunities. There's going to be a local artist who's going to kind of share their thoughts and feelings and talk about what inspires them to be an artist and what this means for them. And in the end, families are going to create a collage to show how their family is a work of art. We're then going to be working with our visual arts department and Jerry's Artorama to create a showcase to share this out with the community. So these are opportunities. We're very excited. We're going to be sharing this out with families tomorrow. So I was very excited to be able to share this tonight at the board presentation. Next, I'll turn it back over to Susie to talk about the academic and social emotional supports.
All right, thanks, Tim. So in addition to the family engagement, we also have academic and social emotional supports for our families. And in addition to the standard academic ones we offer in school, we also are highlighting 3 for you tonight. The first one I want to talk about is the National Art Honor Society connections that we're having with grades 2 to 5 who have their art asynchronously. And the art students in high school will mentor the elementary students, and they will also, when the elementary student submits their work, a high school art student will give them some positive feedback on their art. And the next item that we would like to highlight tonight is the homework helpers and the National Honor Society tutoring that takes place in middle school and in high school. So with the homework helpers, we have high school students who are helping middle school students with their homework. And in high school, we have the National Honor Society members who are tutoring their peers in high school. And the last support that we are currently working on and trying to get in place for everybody is a partnership with the Bridge. And here with the Bridge, we're looking for opportunities at both the elementary and the secondary level to come up with age-appropriate support for our students. And we're also looking to the Bridge to also offer workshops for parents. And so always we're listening to our parent feedback, and we are doing our best to be actionable on it and provide and be responsive. And we're always looking to improve and meet the needs of our students and our families in the RLE.
And with that, that brings us to the end of our presentation. I am going to now stop presenting, and we would love to take some questions and hear from the board.
Great, thank you. I assume we have some questions, so go ahead and put your question mark in the chat box. Amanda.
Hi, Deb, I just wanted to run something by you. I have several questions, but I'm assuming some of them are questions other people have also, so maybe I'll just ask two now. If that's all right. Okay, so first of all, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're very glad to hear from you, especially now that you've been able to complete, this first quarter and have a sense of things so far. So I have to just tell you first that we can't thank you enough for all of the work that you've put into this. We got to see this work from behind the scenes over the course of the summer, and it continues to be astounding what you have done. And I particularly remember all those late nights that Carrie had trying to put all the lists together and doing everything that you could to accommodate our families. We know that even though this was a voluntary choice for some families, it was also what they would call a choiceless choice. So thank you. I know we all feel that way. So one of the things I was wondering, could you highlight for the community some of the ways that our RLE program differs from some of the other districts like ours? Because there are some things there that were built structurally that I think that we're just very proud of and want to make sure that the community has a sense of also. Not sure to whom I should direct that question, but.
Hi, Amanda, it's Paul. I'd be happy to take a first stab at that, and I'd welcome any other input from others. I'm personally aware that in many districts, the extent of their remote learning really is probably more what our hybrid program looks like, where students are at home and they have the opportunity to potentially stream into class and perhaps then access homework assignments online without necessarily the opportunity for or perhaps more limited opportunities for direct instruction from their teacher, because it's more of a shared environment. And when we had our planning discussions early on in the summer, and being the size that we are as a district, we anticipated that even if we had a small percentage at each school, that would translate into large numbers of students. We wanted to create a system by which students that are in the remote learning environment could receive direct instruction from a certified teacher in a classroom setting that really, to the greater extent, paralleled what they would be getting, as opposed to a more passive environment where the teacher's instructing, say, 17 children in front of them, and there are these 3 other children who, through no fault of any teacher, don't necessarily get that same level of attention. And so it was very deliberate in terms of how this program was designed, and specifically at the elementary level, to where, we then had to think about the ability for the students to attend to learning, in what increments, how long of a duration, how many students on a screen, so that we could actually ensure student understanding and student engagement. So it's in that regard that I think our remote learning environment is unique. And I'm aware, even in other states, with conversations I've had with educators and with families, where remote learning is totally asynchronous, where a student kind of logs in to a self-paced, self-directed online learning platform like Edgenuity or something, and do the equivalent of what I would do if I were taking a distance learning course that did not have a dedicated instructor. So you know, that is at one extreme. Just streaming in is at another, and then the ability to provide direct instruction really, I think, is what sets us apart.
I think, Amanda and Carrie, I let you because you certainly know from the start. One of the things I want to say about this, it's a difficult question to answer, Amanda, because I don't want to throw any other district under the bus. I understand local control for education. I understand the value that comes with local control for education, both in this state and nationally. But our remote learners, we haven't seen that complete abrogation where kids just kind of disappear. And that was a conscious choice, but it's a choice that only could be made because of the work people went into it. So what you see typically, in a nutshell, I'm just going to speak pure structurally. They didn't pull kids out that elected remote learning from their classroom. They just stayed in classes and kind of, you're a part of that teacher, and maybe there was streaming and maybe there's not, and that teacher has their class that's in school, maybe their class that's hybrid, and then the kids that are remote. And that's a real difficult task for those teachers. But it's also just, if I could, just in terms of management goes, then there's no planning for how many kids are going to be there, how many kids aren't going to be there, how do you do distancing, how do you do a true hybrid schedule where you're going back and forth. And that's really where that work that was done in the summer, when there weren't really many people working, and certainly Carrie and Ann and Paul and the work they did to redo schedules till all hours of the night to make it so that we could pull teachers, because we have 108 FTEs in our remote learning experience. There's not a district that has that. Certainly not in Connecticut. I don't know anywhere else where we've kind of established this parallel educational system. That certainly makes it different, because basically, what we felt from the start was that signing in and streaming, there are certain things you can definitely do at the high school level, maybe at the middle school level, but it's really tough at the elementary level. So Carrie, go ahead. I don't want to step on your toes.
And I guess I would just say at the elementary level, getting feedback from the teachers, after the first several weeks, I said, what's different? What's different about it? What's similar? What's different? You're teaching in small groups. Small groups, as I said in our report, are part of how we operate as elementary teachers. We're working in small groups all the time, and what feels similar and different. And they said, we're shocked that we feel as close to these children in this remote and distance environment than we would have felt if we were in person with them. That while we're calling this remote, they don't feel that way. That because of this intimacy of this small group environment for children, that they feel like they know them, they've gotten to know them, intimately and deeply. And that to me says so much, that they can re-engage them more quickly. I watched a first grader teacher teach handwriting online to a group of children successfully. That the hardest thing probably is teaching mathematics in some ways, because they have their hands-on materials. We found some wonderful online whiteboards and some great, wonderful online types of things. But the level of relationship that has been built among the staff, among the children, I think the next levels of work, as we've said, is among the families and each other is the next layer of work. But it's really very remarkable to see the SEL work we've been able to continue in this environment, given the small groups, is something I just have not heard about in other places. And I'm just thrilled to be able to pass the baton to Susie, who's taking it to all new levels with morning announcements, with those new pieces. So I've not heard of that kind of discussion from teachers in other places.
And I apologize, I don't want to go long, but I wanted to say one more thing, especially as it relates to just the earlier part of this meeting. When we think about the choices that some families had to make, you know, and as you said, Amanda, it wasn't always a choice, it was a necessity. You know, and we think about our ability to provide an equitable educational environment for all of our kids, regardless of whatever those conditions are that drove them to ask for a remote setting. You know, I'm just proud of our ability and the support of the board to be able to help provide an education that is really, you know, what students deserve, what they need, and equitable in comparison to what we're giving our students who are able to attend our buildings.
Thank you for speaking to some of those things, because to have dedicated principals at each level and to have as many full-time educators who are licensed is really, I think, one of the most important pieces here, because one of the biggest concerns we hear from remote learning families is, you know, as parents, they worry like anyone would, you know, how can we be sure that our kids are going to be where they need to be at the end of the year? How will we be sure? And, you know, we won't know till we know, but we know that the plan that was put in place put as much effort as could possibly put into it to give every assurance that we are positioned to do that. And I just think that's a really important thing to be able to recognize, and thank you for your planning, because I think that's the fear that, you know, parents have, especially if it wasn't a choice, just to make sure they're doing right by their kids, and that we are too. I'll save the rest of my questions.
Okay. Liz.
Yes, my question has to do with substitute teachers. If the teacher that's in charge of the classroom has to be out for whatever reason, do we have a pool of substitutes that we go to cover those classes, or how is that working?
Tim might have a little different answer for secondary, but at elementary, we have a dedicated TA, and Susie could probably speak to that a bit, but we have a dedicated building TA who's our first go-to on a given day if there's multiple substitute people out. Oops, a little interruption there. We are, the teacher will have to post asynchronous plans. So if there's an emergency kind of a situation, typically we try to plan ahead. So the teacher will post asynchronous plans. As much as possible, we ask teachers teachers have been very wonderful. If they say have a medical appointment, you know, people have situations where they've had to bring children maybe for a COVID test or that type of thing. Teachers have not taken full days if they don't need to. So we've had a really dedicated staff. They haven't just taken the full day if they don't need to. They've just taken time that they need to take care of that business. I am currently working, in fact, I spent much of my day today calling to develop a cadre of dedicated remote substitute teachers. Obviously, we do not want people who are not trained, who are not people who are familiar with remote teaching and learning, to be just working with children, not familiar with our programs, our expectations for remote learning. So one of my charges, now that Susie's in place, is to develop a cadre of dedicated substitutes for pre-K-12 and to provide them with training. So I have a dedicated training date set up for the week of the 14th of December, and I'm developing that cadre. It's a need we've had.
Before Tim answers at the high school level, Liz, one of the things that I think is important to acknowledge, and I'm actually really glad you asked this question because I left it out of my superintendent's update. We need substitutes. We need TAs. Whereas Rick's done a fantastic job of building a list. That list is, there's people that are asked, and whereas in the past, you know, our substitutes basically filled open positions because they were substitutes. Now they're people more saying, okay, I'll do this, but that's not necessarily their job. That's something maybe extra. So it's taking more to fill our positions. And the governor today had a news conference about recruiting college kids, which we're also doing, even so that when a teacher is in quarantine in the physical building, that maybe the teacher can still teach, but there's a teaching assistant that's in the classroom with the kids. So we're having some issues with substitutes, just to be plainly clear, across the board, whether it's remote learning or in our physical buildings. That's our biggest risk to being able to stay open, is our staffing question. I think that one of the things that is different about the remote learning is that all of us as parents, your child may not have had an English teacher there at some point in their schooling. Like one day somebody called in or had to leave and we couldn't get a substitute, and that period just became a study period or something. But you as a parent never really knew that. The unique thing with the remote learning experience is parents see every piece of this. So there were some things even at the beginning of the year where it was, well, not all of my schedule fits. And that's, while it's a difficult piece, that's true for our high school students every year. Whereas the first day of school, if the busiest place you would see is the guidance wing and the school counselors who are working on fixing any schedule snafus that might have happened. And, whereas a parent would just hear, oh, well, I waited in line, then I made my class. Now they're seeing it differently. So it's certainly something that people have brought up, and we're working hard. And Rick's office is really trying to add people. Tim, you got an ad?
I would say I'm going to, piggyback off what Carrie said in terms of the fact that, we're in the process of finding a pool of candidates. At the secondary level, it's a little more challenging because we have so many different Google Classrooms that need to be shared out with those faculty members. We want to make sure that we, have those trusted individuals because we have to make them like co-teachers within those classrooms. So we don't want to open this up to everybody. So we want to find that, dedicated pool of teachers who we can start accessing. And that's something we're working on right now. I don't think there's been a day when teachers have missed more than 2 consecutive days. And at the secondary level, that means they would miss 1 period with that teacher. So anything that's been more than that, we've had bodies in those rooms. And again, the plan now moving forward is to identify those dedicated staff members to fill in for that, to help prevent that in the future. And at the same time, our teachers have been trying to do a really great job of putting good asynchronous lessons out there. They've been using Nearpod to create maybe that like 30-minute platform for kids to go in and follow through. We've had teachers create videos of themselves teaching lessons. So the staff is working very hard to make sure that, it's not just here's your paper, go work on it by yourself, but to include all those extra pieces to engage the kids in the process.
And Rick, if you could just jump in and confirm with me, because one of the other benefits, Liz, is that our absence rate at the remote learning is far less than it is in a general year. But Rick, I believe this year we're also lower, even though we expected our absence rates would increase because we're telling people, please don't come in if you don't feel good. We haven't had this spate of absences that we might have expected, including after Thanksgiving, Rick.
No, absolutely, Tom. And I think I mentioned that in my last personnel report a couple of meetings ago. And it still holds true today. Our absences are down about 30% from year over year, and they're all pretty much tied to COVID-related absences. We've had about 250 staff members that have had to quarantine since the start of the school year throughout that fall and into the early part of the winter. So our absences have been primarily tied just to COVID. And we've had a tough time getting subs to fill in for all of our assignments. So we have about 175 subs. We're literally adding subs every single day. It's getting those substitute teachers to take the assignments is where we're struggling right now. We just offered a bonus through the month of November for subs that work for 10 days out of the month. So we just paid that bonus today. To be honest with you, we didn't have enough subs sign up for that bonus as I was hoping. So we're looking to do something a little more creative for December, and we're really kind of just going to chunk this out, get to the December break, And we're adding some college students right now that'll be home for January. And we're hoping that we can continue to plug the holes as we move through January. And then February, the vaccination is here in some parts of the state. And, you know, hopefully this thing will get a little brighter.
Thank you.
All right. Ari?
I was just wondering, I'm pretty predictable in what my questions are going to be about. But I was just wondering, it does seem like, at least academically, that the remote learning school, for the most part, is able to mirror kind of the hybrid model that's being offered in person. My question is, how are kind of the emotional, psychological needs of the students in the remote learning being addressed? I just keep thinking like it's easier for teachers to identify those kids that are struggling in person, change in behavior, change in attitude. It's also easier and maybe less stigmatizing. Unfortunately, there's still that stigma attached to struggling emotionally for a kid to just kind of, you know, during a study hall to go to guidance. I'm just wondering, what are the avenues that students need to follow to access, you know, those supports, guidance, school social worker, and has that been communicated to the families and the students, how they could access those clinical supports if needed?
I can address that from the secondary level. We do have a dedicated school counselor, Ms. Ashley Carlson, who's done a great job with middle school and high school students. We also, because it's only one person for 700 students, we also do leverage a lot of the resources at the home schools. So, you know, Ashley's primary focus is with 6th grade and 9th grade. We felt that was the biggest need in terms of those transition years. And kids in grade 7, 8, and then 10, 11, 12, they generally will access those resources back at those home schools. And, you know, Ashley as well can, you know, if we hear a teacher who's like, yeah, a kid just seemed down, they'll send us an email, you know, either Ashley, myself, Dr. Gravline, we'll reach out to those students and families and make sure those kids are getting those supports that they need. I know Michelle Gravline and I have done a number of home visits as well for students who are worried about that engagement piece. And for the most part, those go really well. And we're really excited about, you know, when we go out, we'll spend 20, 30, 40 minutes, even an hour with those families, just figuring out what's going on to make sure those kids are getting what they need. Because, you know, it is so critical and it is isolating for a lot of these kids. And for a lot of the families, they're realizing that this might not be the best, you know, setting for their kid. Maybe they do need to go back. And, you know, so we're trying to work with families and counsel them in terms of what's going to help their child access their education to the best degree possible.
If I may help. Oh, Susie, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. Oh, yeah. At the elementary level, we're working as a team to ensure that the students are getting what they need, and we're doing a lot of family outreach. Mary Lestini and Ashley Callan have done a tremendous job at calling home for students, and also since we're in a small group, intimate setting, the teachers have a really good relationship with their students, so they do a lot of talking about how you're feeling with the social emotional lessons that we're having, and students feel safe reaching out to their teachers. Maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe they're depressed, or they're missing their friends. And so the teachers let us know, the team know, and then if possible, if necessary, we reach out to the home schools to find a person who has a really good relationship with that child, and then we'll connect them up. And so we're really keeping track of our students, and Mary and Ashley have done a tremendous job, as I stated before, of really keeping tabs on everyone in the RLE elementary.
And I'll just, important to piggyback one point, Gretchen and her team remain engaged. So obviously we have a cadre of students that receive ongoing services. You know, if we have a student that has a certain number of hours of either social work support or clinical support or what have you, and they have maintained those relationships with those service providers by and large, and those folks have just worked those service hours into the schedule. So between existing students and issues that we know about and can work through, and then all of the things that both Susie and Tim described as issues may arise, we do feel like we have a good handle. Michelle, did you?
Yeah, I was just going to add that from my perspective, the teachers have the opportunity in their small group settings in the afternoon to really leverage that time, not only for academic support, but actually for social emotional support as well. And teachers have emailed me, called me, and said, you know, I'm just a little bit concerned about this student. It gives me the opportunity to follow up. The folks that are in the home schools have been fantastic about partnering with us, and the assistant principals have been great. The counselors have been great. Yes, this is what I know about the student. Here's what we've tried. Here's what's worked. Here's what's not worked. And we've just kind of problem solved to try and get whatever support is needed.
Thank you.
Jason.
All right, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you, everyone. I just want to echo the thanks and for all of the creative work that's gone into designing these things, and also then the administrative response to just addressing the challenges. And so my question might be redundant with some of these others, but I wanted to ask particularly about ELL students and special ed students, because in the report that we received, it says that there's 10% of the, or 11% of the student population is ELL, and 18% is special ed. And perhaps some of the responses that you've talked about have been as a result of addressing ELL issues or special ed. But I'd just like to kind of frame that question, particularly about those students and how you've responded to their needs, and in the remote learning environment. So just pointing back to some other conversations that we've had about the 6 largest language groups in West Hartford Public Schools, from Spanish, Portuguese, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Nepali, and Arabic. I think those languages represent on the one hand families and students, but that while the district has done an incredible job of bridging the digital divide and making sure that families and students have the equipment and resources they need, I'd love to hear how the language issue and special ed is addressed in that area. Thank you.
Michelle, you want to go first? I saw you waving.
Sure, I think it's a great question. We have a great resource in Shalise Ross, who's our coordinator for ELL within the district. And so I can reach out to her anytime I need a translator, which I have on multiple occasions, to work with families, whether it be in a Google Meet. We actually did a home visit where that's when we realized that although we could have done it, it was very problematic. And so we then arranged for a Google Meet with a translator to follow up with the family, which was very successful, and got the student what they needed. Those things are tremendous supports to us. We've actually had situations where we've gone out and I've actually met with kind of extended family who were able to help me to translate with the student and family themselves. And they were more than happy to do it, gave me contact information so that I could follow up with them as I needed to. So it's been really good in that regard. I haven't yet, knock on wood, had a situation where I've just been not able to communicate. That doesn't mean there won't be, but we'll have to figure out how to make it happen. Same thing with the special ed resources, great resources within the district. Having been in department supervisor roles, Tim and I, kind of know all of our colleagues in those roles well. And so we know how to get those supports that we need for students.
Tim, did you want to jump in? I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, I just want to really quickly mention that we do have a few ESOL classes as well at the high school level that, we do use that as a resource for our kids at home. It's just really important for us to make sure that we're meeting the needs of everybody as much as we can.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, and I know, and I'll let Susie, give some information on that, the elementary as well. But as the board knows, just for the public, to just have this on the record that, it's not only something that we would do anyway. It's obviously part of our state mandate that we ensure that we are providing all of those services, English to our English learners and to our students with disabilities, and so that is baked right in. But we do have several ESOL teachers that are working, and as I was saying earlier, all of the students that receive IEP services, they have maintained their case managers and they're getting those. And so I'm going to let Susie talk about what some of those services might look like at the elementary level as well.
Yeah, I would like to piggyback on what Michelle said about Shalise Ross and her team, or Superior, and getting the students the resources that they need and reaching out to teachers. And teachers are another great resource that we've been relying on. If they let us know that students are having issues, then we can farm it out to the people that we know are the best person to handle that situation and find help for that student. So we're relying on Shalise and her team, and also the teachers heavily, to let us know students need some assistance. And so they've been great on that. And also for students with disabilities, we're relying heavily on the relationships that they have with their homeschool and their service providers, and the relationships that the team has with the special education teachers. And so just being able to reach out to the homeschool or the teachers in the RLE and know that they're willing to do whatever it takes to assist the students and find resources is incredible. Carrie, do you want to piggyback on that too?
Just a quick comment. I want to compliment Gretchen once again. And one of the things this remote environment's done for us in elementary, we've brought together students from, at one point, 750 elementary children from across all of our schools. Different cultures, different leadership styles, different, maybe systems and ways of operating in these different schools. And we came together in a short amount of time and had to think through structures and systems. So for children, how do we support our most vulnerable children? And I just want to compliment, both our Gretchen and her team, her entire team. We had to break down very, very quickly any sort of, systemic barriers, ego, anything, to just meet children's needs right away. So we've had a true UDL approach, a true universal design for learning approach. So anytime we put out a publication, we have to think immediately, will a family who does not speak English be able to access this right away? So it's broken down any sort of previous barriers we might have had. It's been so I think that's been the unique and wonderful thing about this RLE, is that we've brought together 11 schools into totally. So Gretchen and we have a weekly meeting. Susie now has a weekly meeting with Gretchen and her team where we just open-end break down any kinds of systemic issues, and we've come up with solutions we're going to bring forward to next year. So it's been exciting.
One thing I would like to say too is the paraprofessionals who support the special education students have been doing a tremendous job, just being there every day with the students, encouraging them to participate, meeting their needs, assisting them, and it's been really great to see. And I saw some in the classroom today, and they're doing a tremendous job, and we couldn't be able to do the RLE without the paraprofessionals.
Jason, does that answer your question? Great. Lorna.
Yes, thank you very much for the information shared. Very helpful. Question, recognizing that provisions have been made for our RLE students in terms of a device and being able to connect remotely, but thinking about those assignments where it may require a creative art expression or something that requires a hands-on tool. And we know that when students are in school, during their hybrid week in school, they may have access to those materials. Are provisions made for our students who are in the RLE program to have access to those materials, and how frequent or what is the cadence for being able to access those?
Susie, go ahead.
Can I tackle this one? Lorna, that's actually a timely question because we were just discussing it in the office today of replenishing the student toolkits. So in the beginning of the year, Carrie, Mary, and Ashley worked really hard on getting each student their toolkit for music and art and reading and writing and math. The families came to town hall and picked up a bag of supplies, and when they weren't able to come to town hall and pick it up, Mary, Ashley, or Carrie actually drove to their houses and dropped it off, and Shalise did some too, I believe, and other people who I'm forgetting, so I apologize for that. But so students do have their toolkits right now. They have the supplies that they need in order to do their learning at home in the remote setting. And today we were just discussing what we need to do in order to replenish any supplies that they may need, like whiteboard markers, they have foundation kits, they have crayons, markers, they have paper. So we're working hard and reaching out to teachers to see what the students will need in the next coming weeks or months.
Lorna, I'll just add too, at the secondary level, a very similar event occurred where we had the art teachers put together kits, and they had to be thinking for the entire year because some families, as have been said, this wasn't a choice for them, and they're very cautious about their contact. So we were trying really hard to make sure it was a one-time deal if possible. And at the high school level, they had huge boxes, therefore, that went out to students. Those students who couldn't come in for whatever reason to pick up, they were delivered. Some of them were, I had deliveries done by our principal, actually, at Hall High School, did some deliveries for me. School counselors did deliveries for me. The security guards did deliveries. So just getting them either into the schools or out to the homes, whatever it took.
Wonderful. Thank you. Very good to hear. Very good to hear. Thank you.
Before we go back to Amanda, Mark, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any questions to get them in on this first go around. Wasn't sure if you had any questions.
No, go ahead. I'm listening, and a lot of people have taken some of my questions anyway, so it's good. It's good. I'll save some time.
All right, great. Okay, Amanda, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think we all pretty much have a lot of the same questions. So one of the things I was curious about is, I know you named a number of different things in tonight's presentation and in our reports for the family engagement. So there are opportunities that you've put out for people to respond to and provide you with some feedback. And there's also parents who are able to advocate and to give you some feedback proactively. There's also conferences. So there's a number of different ways for you to hear from parents. But is there a way, I know you're in a continuous improvement model where every week it seems like you're looking for ways to continue improving RLE. Do you have a sense of how you can communicate with the families you don't hear from, or if there are parents who can give you a perspective on how the children might be doing if you're not, if the kids look like they're doing fine, but you haven't really had any way to connect with the parents? Are there any thoughts on how to make sure that the parents we're not able to connect with are able to get some feedback in?
I know that sometime around the holiday, either before or after, we are looking to do some type of like family survey, just to get us a little bit less formal way to get feedback. In terms of like, what does that workload look like from the perspective? How did the conference process work? How do you feel about the level of communication? Is it too much, too little? And just again, try to get feedback for us in terms of, again, like you'd mentioned, continuously looking for ways to improve our process. So that's one thing that we are going to be trying to be putting out right around that break, either the week before, the week after, just so we have time to, get that feedback, implement it, and continuously look for ways to get better at it.
And you know that you mentioned a number of different ways that the kids can connect with one another through their classes, and the Bridge is putting together, they have things at the Teen Center, they have the programs that they're working with you to try to build. But if there's one thing that West Hartford is known for, I think it's our collaboration and the way that the community kind of upholds things. So one of the reasons why we put together this One Community, 1 Year theme was to make sure that when you're working at max capacity, which everyone is, the community can try to step in ways that can be helpful. So looking at the winter, particularly for our remote learners, are there ways that you're seeing the community for them to help in different ways? So I know it's a little bit touchy because we can't encourage gatherings, but when the snow starts to fall, are we ready with coats and things for the kids? Are there maybe some loose discussions about whether we could do sledding type things by grade, or outdoor bonfires in a safe location, something where there's ways for kids to socialize safely that are approved by the town in the ways that it would be appropriate, but to just be thinking about how community members might be able to chip in on some of this work, because the schools aren't necessarily going to be able to do all of the pieces around socialization unless they're virtual. And I don't think we want to keep adding everything virtually. So have you seen any, or if you haven't, maybe if we could just encourage you to keep your eyes open, or to be vocal if you think there's ways that community organizations can step in.
I have engaged with Dr. Scott Ratchford in trying to brainstorm some of these opportunities. The art idea was one that kind of came out of some of those discussions. And we're going to continue to have those conversations with them about these ideas, and then kind of pass them by and figure out, what is reasonable and safe. And I think from the RLE perspective, is that safety perspective we're really trying to kind of leverage right now. So it does make it hard, to do like a drive-in movie, or to do some of these things, we're trying to maintain that safety concern. But, so we are continuing to try to leverage those resources we have in the district to find those opportunities to get those kids to engage and socialize, because it is really important.
And to
one of the
piggyback on
things
what
that's
Tim
important to
said-
remember
Oh, sorry,
also,
Tom.
Amanda, is that there's no problem. One of the things that can be difficult is there are parents also in the remote learning community that don't want those opportunities off, because then they're saying no to their child while other people are doing it, and that's the reason that they're in the remote learning. So to have a school-sponsored event, that kind of pressure of, well, we're doing this, and that's the delicate balance here. Like the movie idea, I get it, but bringing people together in any setting puts an implied pressure sometimes on people that a lot of those parents have reached out and said, we don't want that. So that's the delicate balance, trying to build that community. And also really another important thing is really maintaining that community with the school they're going back to next year, because this isn't a community that's lasting forever. This community ends at the end of this year. Now, friendships won't end, how they're together don't, the people that have met each other from different backgrounds, it's a great opportunity, but we also have that delicate balance that we have to walk. Go ahead, Susie, sorry.
No, I was just going to say we have to, the families are remote, as Tom said, for a reason. We have to respect them. And I also noticed that in the coffees, the principal coffees that we have, the parents are looking for ways for the kids to interact, but in a safe manner and virtual. I think they're looking for ways online. So we've been trying to, we're going to put together, I told the parents we would put together a survey and gather information for the parents, because they really want their kids to have lunch bunch opportunities. And so I said, we would gather this information for you, because not all the parents are in the RLE directory. We would gather some information for you. It's voluntary. Anybody who wants their child to participate in a lunch bunch, here's a group who's willing to hold one for you. And also, if a parent has a particular skill or hobby they're willing to share with a group of people, we're going to gather some information that will give parents another avenue for getting their kids together virtually as they're wishing. And also, I just want to point out, I did just come from a building setting, and the opportunities to gather in large groups are quite limited in the building as well. The PTOs are not offering anything in person, it's all virtual. So we're trying to parent that, to copy that aspect as well. And we're really doing a nice job. And if people are hearing things about other towns with the libraries are offering here and with the libraries offering West Hartford, we're trying to bring those ideas together and see if we can somehow offer it safely to our students.
Amanda, does that get to all of your questions?
I just had one last question, if that's okay. I know it's a lot, but we're so excited to be able to ask you all these things at once. Oh, the last thing I wanted to ask you about, I was really glad to see that you're utilizing the older children to help with the arts and with homework and mentorships. That I spent a lot of time in Montessori education, and that is a part of the pedagogy that it helps the older students to reinforce what they're doing. But it also is extremely helpful for the young kids, and it's exciting for them to have different people presenting. So I know that that's an area that seems to have endless possibilities, and is also, especially for kids who might be thinking of teaching, and we have that diversity educators group, Future Leaders, if they are interested in getting exposed to what it's like to be with younger kids and practice teaching. Are there any thoughts on expanding that intergroup, interage teaching model in some ways, even if it's informally?
Well, we just launched it at the middle school and high school. We're trying to get a sense for how many kids we've had volunteer participate, and trying to see if they're able to meet the capacity needs at the middle school and high school. If we're finding we have a lot, more kids who are willing to participate in the helping lens, I'm sure that's something we can look into. But I think right now we're only about 2-3 weeks into this whole process. We're really, trying to find out where are we at right now, and let's calibrate in terms of those resources. But it is definitely something I would love to explore, moving forward if we have the students to help in that capacity.
And to I'm really looking forward to the National Art Honor Society students working with the younger students. And so we're going to use that as sort of a pilot program to see how well that's working, how many students are partaking in it. And if it's really going well, then I think working with students, as Amanda, you said, the future educators of diversity would be a great idea to try and get those students involved with the younger students. I guess, but one of the things that we're really going to have to work around or try and think about is a supervision aspect of that. So I love that idea, and if the National Art Honor Societies work out really well, then I think we should start looking at other avenues. So thank you for suggesting that. I appreciate it.
And Amanda, I'll piggyback one thing. I had an earlier conversation last month with Donna Cody, who runs our Hannock, homework center for the Hillcrest neighborhood students, and we talked about future educators of diversity as a group of students that might be helping out over there through a virtual setting.
You good? Okay. Other questions? I have 2 questions of my own. I just want to see if any other board members have questions. All right, 2 quickies, I think. What is the absence rate at our remote learning schools compared with our absent rate for students in our physical schools?
Probably, Susie, do you mind me popping on? Kind of look at, it's actually not, we have probably maybe about 24 at the most, I'd say, out of 700 and plus students who are some chronic absent students who we're working with homeschools, and like we would, if we have to do well visits, if we have to have homeschool supports, oftentimes it takes me calling over to a homeschool principal or a teacher who has a relationship with a family to help just give us some extra support. They don't know us as well. to find out what's needed, to find out what's worked, to reach out. So that's in most cases helped us. Is it a technology issue? Just finding out what's going on, what's the need and the support. In a couple of cases, it's switching a student's time that they're meeting with their teacher, to help out, that it's a work situation that's changed. So in many cases, we've been able to resolve. No more than a couple dozen, probably chronic, I would say, attendance issues. Other than that, I'd say we've had really great attendance, similar to our staff attendance. Kids are in school, which is really great. And if they're not, they are logging into their asynchronous, so their times here and there. Students have, doctor's appointments like they do typically in elementary school. They have their pediatrician well visits, or maybe someone in their house is quarantining, they have to get their COVID test or whatever. But we've had actually very strong attendance as a whole.
I would tend to have similar numbers at the secondary level. We probably have about those 24 kids who we're chronically working with to get them engaged. There's probably another 24 kids who are, here and there. And again, we're continuously working with the teachers and the families and the homeschools, the homeschool counselors, the assistant principals who they have those relationships with to figure out what we can do to get these kids engaged. Sometimes it turns out to be, a connectivity issue. The internet's not working. We've been getting them the MiFi settings. Sometimes the Chromebooks have just stopped working for the kids. So we're doing everything we can to get those resources to those families to overcome it. Oftentimes kids are just struggling to read their schedules at the middle school and high school with all those rotations. So we've been reaching out and using our counselors and Michelle Graveline's doing a great job in terms of just coordinating. Okay, let's set up a Google Meet. Let's walk you through each one of your classes. Here are your meetings. Here's a form for you. We kind of fill it out for them. So it maps out exactly what they need to be doing, where they need to be, where to click to really get them to re-engage in the process.
There's tenacity. And again, I want to compliment Ashley,
Thank you.
Callum, and Mary Listini. They've been phenomenal, our coordinators.
Thank you. One last question from me is, you had mentioned that the students have the opportunity to participate in after-school activities. Are the remote school students participating in sports at either of the high schools? And is that an option for them, I guess?
It's an option. Frankly, there's been some cases across the state where you've had instances, and we haven't seen this here, where you had parents pulling their children so that they wouldn't miss sports, and they'd be in remote learning so that they could play sports, so that they wouldn't be put in quarantine from something that happened in school. We have not seen that. That's been written about. I've heard tales about that. We don't have a large number of people that cross from the remote learning to our sports team. Certainly, it's if any, it's a minimal number, but they can.
Great, thank you. Are there any further questions? This was a very comprehensive presentation. All right, thank you very much. We'll look forward to hearing from you all again, hopefully later on in the school year. And thank you for all you're doing for our remote learning students and families. All right, we will move on to routine matters. And we have item A, the financial report. The approval of the financial report for the period ending October 31st, 2020. And the recommendation is that the Board of Education approve the financial report for the period ending October 31st, 2020. We'll take a motion, a second, and then we'll have discussion. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mark. And a second?
Second, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. So I will present financials. Liz, do you want to project this on the screen? Or if you don't have it available, it's okay. We have our packets.
Nope, I know everyone has it in their packets. Let me see if I can bring it up.
While you are doing that, I'll just kick off And the high level statement is that we have a slight increase in our surplus from last month to this month. We're now projecting $124,000 surplus by the end of the year, which is basically pennies when you compare it with the size of our budget. We do have, if you look at page 10 of the budget book, we have some variances based on the fact that we have some department supervisors serving as principals and assistant principals this year. So that means that there's a balance left in the department supervisors line item, but we're a principal and assistant principal line item. We also have some savings from vacant librarian positions. Just as a note for members of the board and the public, all of our schools do have a librarian or a library media specialist there. So the vacancies are that each of the high schools now just has fewer of the librarians, but every school has one. So everything else is pretty much the same as what we've talked about in the last month or so. Moving on to the grants page 11 of your board booklet. The grants have been extremely helpful, particularly some of the federal grants that have helped for additional staffing and help for paying for PPE. You'll see that we do have a balance in the fiscal year 21 IDEA, that's the 502152 line, but we have until June 30th of 2022 to spend that, so we're not worried at all about whether or not we're going to spend those funds. We fully expect to spend all of the grant funds. Moving into special funds, just a few differences from what we've seen in the past. We have slightly lower interest on our investments, fewer facility rentals this year. That was, of course, expected. And we expect our preschool to break even this year, which is pretty great. We've talked in prior months about our summer schools, obviously, in this current fiscal year, and that was actually profitable this year, which was a nice change of pace for us. Moving on to the nutrition services page, this is going to be a struggle for us, we expect, for most of the year, but we're doing a little bit better in October than we were doing in September, and we're tracking, I don't want to give it away for next month's financial report, but we are tracking pretty well in November to do less poorly than we have been doing in September and October. So you'll see that we are operating still at a deficit for the month of October of about $83,755, but this is a smaller loss than we experienced in September, and that's because we had more days of school, and we expect that November will be even better now that the elementary students are in full-time, so we have more students in the buildings purchasing lunches. I mean, the big story on lunches is the meal count. So if you compare October of 2020 with October of 2019, we're serving about a third the number of lunches every day than we did last year during October. And even though we are being reimbursed by the federal government for our school lunches, it's not quite enough based on the fact that we're just not selling as many lunches as we were. We expect this is probably a one-year problem. We're hopeful it's a one-year problem. This is an area of our budget which had been very challenging over the course of several years, but we've finally gotten it under control in the last couple of years. So we're hopeful that this is just a blip and on the radar. So that is, those are the financials for this month, and I'm sure Liz will be happy to answer any questions that go beyond what I just presented.
Deb, if I could just chime in on the nutrition services, this is a problem across the state and really across the country with nutrition services accounts where we use those accounts that have built up a surplus to fund any improvements in our kitchen areas. And, when you're talking about going from a surplus to a $500,000 deficit at the end of the year, this is something that all the superintendents met with Commissioner Cardona about and urged some state funding to help this, some federal funding, hopefully, in another round of stimulus that would focus on this. But it's a large problem because it's shifting. The board's never had to fund nutrition services. And this is setting it up as we're going to have to. You can't run that deficit. So anything that we get, we're going to have to slide into that area this year. So while it is just a 1-year problem, it's a pretty massive 1-year problem. So any discussion with representatives or legislators that any of you have, this is a problem that I'm not sure everybody's aware of yet, but superintendents have been trying to bring it up with people.
Yeah, thank you for that. Amanda had a question?
I do. Normally, I wouldn't be asking this in December, but how are you approaching enrollment projections? Because obviously, we had so many kids who either didn't start kindergarten at the same time, or maybe did a year in a different learning environment. That must be a different process. Yeah. I'm just curious.
Liz and I actually met about that this morning, and we're developing next year's budget right now. We have a meeting tomorrow with Paul and Gretchen, Liz, Andy, and myself going through next year's numbers. And as you know, typically the board gets a presentation from Chip Ward about long-term enrollment planning. And there was a back and forth about, do we even do that this year in terms of how do we project something that's so unknown? But I'm going to talk to Chip later this week. I do think there's value in it, especially for the people that haven't been on the board previously, to go through the historical trends and what we see, because there are years over that time that Chip's been doing this, over 20 plus years, where you do see some historical blips. So next year, we're going to be guessing what our numbers are, and we're probably going to plan for it to go back to something more reasonable. But there's some early interesting demographic trends nationally that will have long-term enrollment trends here where that won't show up yet this year, but the early returns are that nationally there's a decline in OBGYN visits, and that we actually may see a dip in births in 2021 compared to what you typically have, and relatively sizable, which will get corrected for, but it'll probably mimic what we saw at the end of the aughts with the last economic downturn, where we did see that dip that ended up being about a 2-year big dip that we expected to continue, but it wasn't, because it was just that kind of trend. So we are gonna have Chip do a presentation to you either January or February, where we look at historical trends in West Hartford and what this may mean. But right now, what we're going to be doing is an educated guess, and the idea of what will kindergarten numbers look like. We'll probably see an increase. We'll probably stay relatively flat. Expecting some of those students to come back for next year. But more will come on that over the next 8 weeks as we begin to kind of center in on next year's budget. But it's certainly a riddle.
Mark.
Thanks. Really, all kidding aside, Tom, you mentioned that you saw potentially birth rates for this year or next year will go down, because I've heard a different version of that, whereas that they were expecting to go up with really, again, no kidding aside, with everybody being home back in March through the summer, that there was a potential for a large birth year. And whether we have new board members or not, the exercise of doing the projections, I think, are important. One for the budget, one for planning, because how do you plan without something in place, right? So, I'm glad you're doing it, because I would have encouraged. But and go ahead. I have one follow-up after that.
No, I'm glad you asked the question. I'm just Googling to see where I read it. Yeah, the coming COVID baby bust, the Brookings Institute did a study, and they estimate 500,000 less births over the next year. So decline in births could be on the order of 300,000 to 500,000 fewer births next year. So it's a study done by two professors of economics, and they used OBGYN visits. Of course, they don't have the data now. This could be wrong, so we wouldn't use it really for long-term planning. We have 6 years to kind of correct any assumptions that are made, and we do, that's a national study, which on a micro level could be way different in West Hartford. We've seen what's happened to home sales. I mean, West Hartford's home sales over the past 6 months have been on fire. So that could change West Hartford's rates also. So
yeah, I was just going to mention that because there, the population, well, even in the southwest corner of the state has increased. People are moving out of the big urban areas, or they have been. So I know we've seen some of that.
Yeah, so that could be a net gainer for Connecticut also. So there's, getting from the macro down to the micro, and I'll be glad to have Chip come in and talk about it. He's pretty good at that.
So, and just a side note, Deb had, I did really appreciate, don't take this the wrong way, Deb had mentioned how we look forward to another briefing on remote learning. I, for one, do not. I do not. It was a great briefing, but I really am. I'm an optimist. Glass is always half full for me. That in June we aren't even talking about this anymore, and we're kind of dusting off our shoes and walking to school again. And so I just had to say that because as much as I appreciated the brief, I hope we don't have to continue it very long.
You're here. Other questions or comments on the financials? If not, we have a motion on the floor to approve the financial report. I will try your minds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions? And the ayes have it. Motion passes. Moving to information and reports and communications and reports from board members. Are there other reports from other boards and organizations? From board members? If not, and no other information and discussions, we move to non-staff communications and reports from our student board representatives, and we'll start with Rochelle tonight. How's Connor?
Yes. So I would say it's been a pretty quiet couple of weeks at Conard. I think that most students have adjusted to the new hybrid model. I'm working with Mr. Duarte on getting out a survey for students, which should be out for next week. At that point, we decided that it will be almost a month since the new hybrid model has been implemented. And at that point, most students will have the experience and opinions to voice any concerns that they may have with their hybrid experience. This week on Wednesday and Thursday are parent-teacher conferences. As you can expect, these will be done virtually, and it gives a chance for parents to meet with teachers. At Conard, Ms. Esposito and Mr. Duarte are working on Human Rights Day, which is on December 10th. Human Rights Day in the past has been a very important part of the Conard school year. It's an opportunity for students to have roundtable discussions regarding social and humanitarian issues in our community and across the world. These class discussions in the past have been largely moderated and led by students, and we're glad to see that this will be taking place this year, and it will be nicely incorporated during our community block. Thank you.
Thank you. Lily?
So after Thanksgiving break, it's been pretty quiet around Hall too. but there are a few things happening in the upcoming weeks. So this Friday and Saturday at 7:30 p.m., Hall's Black Box Theater will be performing the Tennessee Williams play, The Magic Tower, which is directed by students Audrey Weber and Kate Sorensen. The show is virtual, and free tickets can be reserved online to access the live stream. Hall's annual Pajama Day will be December 10th for the red group and December 17th for the blue group. Hall will be raising money for the Connecticut Children's Hospital during Pajama Day in the following ways. While the normal donations on Pajama Day, just to wear pajamas, as well as the selling of special Pajama Day masks. And also Harry's Pizza in Bishop's Corner is selling bonus gift cards. So every gift card that's sold there comes with a bonus gift card that can also be donated to Connecticut Children's as well. Hall DECA is giving back to the community this holiday season with Holiday Helpers, which is a program in which clubs or other members of the Hall community can adopt a family for the holiday season and provide them with any necessary amenities on their wish list. Parent-teacher conferences are also happening this week in the afternoon online. And finally, Hall's Unified Theater Show is coming up. We're hoping that it will be this Friday on a YouTube live stream, but there's been a lot of adjustments to make the show fully virtual, so it may end up getting pushed back to next week. But the theme of the show is friendship and kindness, which is pretty timely for 2020. So just keep an eye out for when the final date of the show is announced.
Thank you. I made an error and we forgot to approve the minutes, so that's on me. So with your indulgence, we'll go back to item 6B, approval of the minutes. And I'm seeking a motion to approve the minutes from the November 17th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mark Sedanowitz.
Is there a second?
Second, Ari Steinberg.
Thank you, Ari. Any discussion on the minutes?
Yes. Oh, pardon me. I'm not quick enough to hit the question mark. Pardon me for just jumping in. I was trying to hit the question mark before. Thank you. Yes, just a suggestion, and thank you so much for the minutes. They're always so helpful in capturing what has been discussed. One thing, just do want to recognize, and we do know that from the presentation that was held at our previous meeting, as wonderful as it was, unfortunately, there were times where there were intermittent challenges in hearing what was said because of low volume projection from the microphones. However, there were some questions, or rather some comments that were made following the presentation, and just have a suggestion of something to insert to account for that. So I apologize, Cammie, for not sending something over before. I do have a suggestion of just an insert. Again, just want to recognize that there was acknowledgement made of the presentation, even though there were challenges in hearing that, and would like for the minutes to reflect that.
So I just have I think the minutes, I don't have any problem with that, but I just want to be clear and make sure that we do the right things. The minutes have to represent the meeting itself and not anything afterwards.
No, this is from the meeting. There were questions, there were comments, feedback that was given following the presenters.
Okay. I thought you meant afterwards. Sorry.
No. And I can share my blurb now aloud, just so there's transparency of what I'm suggesting to include. But I respect what you're saying, Mark. Certainly this reflects. All right. So in the paragraph where it says the board thanked Dr. Haskins, Dr. Ratchford, Ms. Pitter, and Mr. Keogh for their reports, but noted intermittent challenges in fully hearing the presenters due to low volume projection from the microphones. Comments were made by board members expressing value and appreciation for the information shared. They also asked questions on how we could integrate Mr. Keogh's work into the curriculum. To fully capture the entire presentation, the board requested for copies of the presentation to be sent for review. So that's what I'm suggesting to insert within the minutes, if there are no objections to that.
Does anyone have any objections to making that addition or amendment to the minutes? Okay, so after we vote, Lorna, will you type that up and send that over to Cammie?
Will do. Thank you, Cammie.
All right, so I will try your minds for the amended motion to adopt the minutes with the suggested language by Lorna. All those in accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Abstentions? And the ayes have it, and the minutes are passed. Thank you. All right, future business, announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, December 15th at 7 p.m., also virtually. We'll see each other here online. We do not have a meeting the first Tuesday in January, but our next meeting will be Tuesday, January 19th, regular Board of Education meeting, plus the presentation of the capital improvement plan, also likely to be online. And sometimes we do have a board workshop in the beginning of January, so we could talk offline, Tom, about whether we'll be doing that coming up. Are there any requests for future agenda items? And are there any visitors who've joined us who might wish to make any comments? All right. With no further ado, we do not have an executive session. I will seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Lorna. And a second?
Second. Liz?
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, everybody.